What's the biggest moment that stood out to you from the last two episodes?
Well, there were two big moments for me, Molly and Max. The one is obvious in terms of his emotion at the end, because he was basically highlighting and illuminating what he had said a bit earlier in the episode, whereas he was pointing to the sacrifices that he made in order to be a champion. And his attitude was, those who came after me as teammates who didn't endure and have to endure what I had to endure, I don't believe they had the right to sit up there and tell me to be differently. They didn't have to endure what I had to endure. They didn't have to pay the price that I had to pay to get here. And I knew that in order to win, that's how you won. And so I was certainly going to make the demand the same. And as he said directly, none of them can ever say that Michael Jordan asked them to do a thing that he did not or would not have done himself. So that one stood out to me above all else. The other thing is, and I just got to say it, and I take no pleasure in saying this because I love the guy personally, but Scottie Pippen looks very, very bad in this docuseries overall. And through his own words, nobody else's. This is not about Jordan. This is not about Phil Jackson or anybody else. Let's think about this, y'all, for a second. I think episode number 2, we see Scottie Pippen admitting that he delayed his surgery and didn't get it taken care of during the summer because his attitude was he was being underpaid by the Bulls, and damn them, he wasn't going to F up his summer. And so as a result, he missed the first 35 games. He was talking about never playing in a Bulls uniform again and essentially procrastinated and delayed his arrival for that last season on purpose. Then last night we saw in 1994, you refused to check into a game when Phil called the last play for Tony Kukoc. But prior to that, don't miss it, prior to that, they were talking about how the Bulls were successful that year because they ran the triangle to near perfection with Scottie Pippen obviously being the architect, but Tony Kukoc had hit the game-winning shot on several occasions, and they were winning by sharing the basketball because Michael Jordan wasn't there to yell at them, and he wasn't there to always take the final shot. So it wasn't like Phil Jackson was asking of something, asking you to make a sacrifice that you hadn't made already on several occasions during that season. So we got to take that into consideration as well. And so when you look at it from that perspective, those two elements, those two moments in this docuseries, along with the obvious migraine that he couldn't help, this is an all-time 50 great player. As far as I'm concerned, one of the top 3 defenders in the history of basketball, a 6-time champion, a good dude, the whole bit. But those 3 things, the migraine, the contract dispute, and then not checking into a game, all of those things are the things that resonate about Scottie Pippen. And I don't think he looks good with this docuseries at all.
Well, let me touch on the Pippen thing first, since you brought it up, Stephen A. Scottie Pippen, let's not forget, this is not just a game. This is game 3 of a playoff series against the Knicks, right? Like, he doesn't, yeah. And then let's take into consideration, Pippen wasn't a great shooter. Kukoc was a much better shooter. And then let's take into consideration, it worked. Kukoc hit the shot and they won. I mean, like, it makes Pippen look terrible, I agree. And unlike, I've heard it compared, I read recently where someone on that Bulls team compared it to like Bill Buckner in 1986 letting the ball go between his legs. But that's an honest mistake on the field of play. Of course, Buckner was going for the ball. Just one of those things went through his legs. This is Pippen's choice not to go in. So for him to compound that mistake all these years later, and the documentary did a great job last night of building you up to think, here comes Pippen with a mea culpa. For him instead to say, I'd have done the same thing all over again, is a really bad look, and I would hope Scottie would reconsider that. To me, and that absolutely jumped out. Another moment was the finals game that fell on Father's Day. Because the thing about Jordan now, everyone knows he was 6-6 in the championship, and he never went to a 7th game in the finals and all that stuff, and he was 6-time finals MVP, and he's the best player ever, all those kind of things. So how do you create drama? Because we know he beats everyone. So it's set up, the Sonics didn't have a chance, and no one did think the Sonics had a chance, but the Sonics won over 60 games that year. They beat Houston, who was defending back-to-back champions in the playoffs, and Olajuwon was still playing and balling. They beat Utah, who's on their way to 2 finals appearances, on the way to get to the Bulls. They were a powerhouse team. They just weren't considered no one considered them to have a chance against that Bulls team, because that Bulls team was the greatest of all time. So you have to start kind of thinking of ways to drum up the drama, right? And so when the doc touches on, hey, it's an emotional time for Jordan, the knee-jerk reaction is, oh, come on, you guys are looking for some drama here. But in fact, when it comes full circle and they reinforce what went on with his father throughout the doc, and then the fact that it fell on Father's Day. I know people oftentimes say, well, that's the escape from the emotional turmoil of everyday life is the workplace, right? An athlete can go to the field of play and escape all that. But anyone who's gone through something like that, it's a big thing. So when Jordan says, hey, it wasn't Gary Payton who bothered me, it was other things. It rings true to me, especially since the thing only went the 6 games. So that jumped out to me.
I agree with you. I don't disagree with you on any of those points. And that's what I love about it. And then when you see the raw emotion, you recognize the fact that those emotions that he showed throughout the years weren't fake. You know, you could see that the guy is intense, that he was a high-end competitor, that he cared a great deal, and that he demanded the same from you. And just think about it. Anybody who's wanted anything, when you've sacrificed in order to win, you just don't want people by your side that don't want to make those same sacrifices, not as teammates. Now, if you've got friends, if you got fans and people like that, and they want to praise you for your exploits, that's entirely different. But when it comes to going to war and doing everything that you can to be a winner, you can't pull that off if you have somebody beside you that's willing to take shortcuts and willing to cliff note their way through things per se or anything like that. You just can't pull it off. Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.